The year was 2357. Earth was no longer the fragile blue marble it once was. Humanity had spread like wildfire across the cosmos. From the frozen wastelands of Titan to the lush exoplanets orbiting distant stars, the United Terran Federation had carved its place in the universe, not with diplomacy, but with fire and steel. They had fought for every inch of space, against the cold void, against the limitations of their own biology, and against the arrogance of older species that believed humanity was just another primitive race destined to burn out. The Galactic Council had long dismissed them, calling them reckless, unpredictable, too young to understand the delicate balance of interstellar politics. For centuries, the great empires of the stars had ignored humanity, content to watch from afar as these upstart primates tinkered with technology far beyond their natural grasp. And then they arrived. The Xal'Zir Dominion, a species so ancient their wars predated Earth's first written language. They did not negotiate. They did not tolerate resistance. They conquered. For 10,000 years, they had swept across the galaxy, consuming entire civilizations, reducing proud worlds to ash and breaking empires beneath their boot. When the Xal'Zir set their sights on Earth, the Galactic Council simply sighed. Another primitive race, another doomed world. A massive fleet emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter, casting shadows that stretched for miles. Their dreadnoughts, each the size of a city, drifted into formation, blotting out the stars. The Xal'Zir war machine had arrived, and with it, the end of humanity. A message broadcast across all human frequencies crackled to life. Surrender, or be exterminated. It was not a request. It was not a negotiation. It was a statement of fact, delivered with the cold, detached confidence of a species that had never known defeat. And for a moment, just a moment, the galaxy held its breath. Would humanity bow? Would they tremble before superior firepower as so many others had? Would they beg, plead, throw themselves at the mercy of a force so overwhelming that resistance seemed suicidal? No, because humanity had been waiting for this moment. Across every colony, across every fleet, across every battle-hardened soldier who had spent their life preparing for the war that would one day come, the response was unanimous. No speeches, no desperate last stands, no hesitation. Earth's response came in the form of railguns charging, battle stations going online, and the distant hum of warships powering up their jump drives. The Xal'Zir had arrived expecting submission. Instead, they had stumbled into the deadliest force the universe had never seen coming. The Galactic Council watched, unaware that they were about to witness the most terrifying revelation in galactic history. Humanity was not the prey. Humanity was the storm. The Xal'Zir fleet moved with the precision of a species that had conquered 1,000 worlds before breakfast. Their dreadnoughts, sleek and black like obsidian knives, descended upon Mars with the quiet arrogance of executioners. The Dominion had done this so many times, it was practically routine. Scan the system, isolate key military assets, and strike before resistance could even begin. The war was over before it had even started. At least that's what they thought. The moment their ships entered Mars's orbit, the silence was shattered. The first warning came as a blinding streak of light cutting through the void, a tungsten slug fired at near relativistic speeds from Phobos Station's hidden railgun array. It punched straight through the lead dreadnought, the kinetic energy so immense that the ship didn't just explode. It disintegrated. 1 second, it was there. The next, it was a cloud of rapidly expanding metal fragments and confused alien screams over the comms. The Xal'Zir hesitated for a fraction of a second, their perfect military machine stuttering in disbelief. That hesitation cost them another 3 ships as Mars's surface defenses roared to life. Ground-based railguns, each the size of skyscrapers, lit up the dark sky with hypersonic projectiles. Orbital platforms deployed swarms of AI-controlled interceptors, tiny but vicious, weaving through the enemy formations with terrifying efficiency. And then, the real fight began. Human warships, sleek, angular, and bristling with weaponry, emerged from the shadow of Deimos. They were smaller than the Xal'Zir dreadnoughts, less massive, less imposing. But what they lacked in sheer size, they more than made up for in speed, tactics, and unapologetic brutality. They didn't move like traditional fleets. They darted, juked, changed formations on the fly, adapting to the battle in real time. The Xal'Zir commanders barked orders, trying to adjust. They sent their destroyers forward, shields up, weapons charged. It didn't matter. Humanity had been ready for this war before the Xal'Zir even knew Earth existed. When the Xal'Zir launched their first boarding parties, expecting a swift and easy subjugation, they were met with something they had never encountered before. Humans. Up close. They expected fear, panic, a desperate struggle. Instead, the first wave of Xal'Zir warriors stormed onto a Terran battleship and were instantly greeted by the shrieking war cry of an Earth Marine named Private Rodriguez, who had somehow duct-taped a grenade to a chainsaw. The footage of what happened next would later become legendary across the galaxy. As the Xal'Zir forces scrambled, confused by the sheer insanity of what they were witnessing, the rest of humanity's forces pressed the advantage. EMP bursts took out enemy shields. Swarms of automated drones equipped with AI-driven targeting tore through Xal'Zir formations. Stealth bombers slipped past their defenses and detonated their supply ships from the inside. The Dominion's perfect, calculated invasion was crumbling, and it wasn't because of superior firepower. It was because humans didn't fight like anyone else. They didn't surrender when they were outnumbered. They didn't break formation when under fire. And most terrifying of all, they didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like predators. For the first time in thousands of years, the Xal'Zir found themselves in a war they couldn't understand. And by the time they realized it, it was too late. The Xal'Zir were no strangers to war, but this was different. This was chaos. Their commanders barked orders, recalibrating their strategies, deploying advanced countermeasures, but nothing worked. Their enemies weren't following any predictable patterns. It was like fighting a hurricane, a wildfire, a force of nature that refused to be contained. Every time they adjusted their tactics, the humans adapted faster. Every time they thought they had gained the upper hand, something insane happened. The Dominion had deployed their biomechanical war beasts, massive creatures of synthetic muscle and reinforced chitin bred for slaughter. On countless worlds, these monstrosities had broken enemy ranks, reducing even the bravest warriors to shreds. But humans? Humans looked at them and laughed. A squad of Terran Marines cornered in a ship's corridor should have been slaughtered in seconds. Instead, they charged. One of them, an absolute lunatic named Sergeant O'Malley, slammed an entire bag of high-yield explosives onto a war beast's chest, slapped it twice like a bad prank, and yelled, "Hold this, you ugly bastard!" before drop-kicking it into an airlock and blasting it into deep space. The Xal'Zir didn't understand. Where was the fear? Where was the desperation? Every species they had ever fought broke under pressure, crumbled before their might. But these creatures, they enjoyed the fight. They weren't just resisting, they were having fun. A Xal'Zir warlord personally led an assault on a human battleship, thinking that their sheer presence would force a surrender. The response? A single human soldier sprinting out of cover, dual-wielding shotguns, screaming at the top of his lungs. The warlord barely had time to register what was happening before the first shotgun blast removed their left arm and the second caved in their skull. The warlord's forces panicked. Humans took advantage. Grenades rolled into hallways. Drones dropped from the ceilings like metal wasps. An engineer, completely out of ammo, beat an alien to death with a wrench while singing an old rock song from Earth. And then, the ludicrously impossible happened. A Xal'Zir capital ship, larger than an entire Terran city, was taken down, not by orbital bombardment, not by overwhelming firepower, but by one human ship. A single stealth corvette, call sign Reaper, hacked into the Xal'Zir network, disabled their engines, and set their reactor to overload. The last transmission from the doomed flagship was nothing but panicked screams before it vanished in a supernova of fire. The Galactic Council watched in horrified fascination. They had expected a massacre. What they got was an onslaught. The Xal'Zir invasion, a force that should have wiped humanity from existence, was falling apart. For the first time in thousands of years, the galaxy understood the truth. Humans weren't just surviving, they were winning. The Xal'Zir Dominion had never known defeat. Their history spanned 10,000 years of conquest. Their fleets had crushed civilizations that dared resist. Their warriors had stood unchallenged for millennia. And yet, here they were, watching their forces disintegrate in real time. Their dreadnoughts, once the terror of the stars, now burned in orbit like dying embers. Their mighty warriors lay scattered in wreckage, torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight on anyone else's terms. Their invasion, their grand display of dominance, had turned into a massacre, but not theirs. On the bridge of the last remaining Xal'Zir command ship, Overlord Vorakal watched in stunned silence as his empire crumbled before him. His advisors shouted desperate commands, but it was pointless. The Dominion's mighty war machine had met something far worse than resistance. They had met humans. And humans were not afraid to burn the whole battlefield if it meant victory. The comms were filled with panicked voices, distorted by static and screams. Reports of human infiltration teams carving through defenses like demons in the dark. Battleships ramming into their formations at suicidal speeds, detonating in nuclear fire just to take out one more enemy. And the worst part? The humans weren't losing morale. If anything, they were getting more aggressive. A transmission cut through the chaos, direct and clear. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a demand. It was just one sentence, spoken in the kind of calm, controlled voice that sent chills through Vorakal's exoskeletal frame. You have 10 seconds to surrender, or we turn the rest of your fleet into dust. The Overlord hesitated, clenching his claws. His kind had never surrendered, not once. But as he looked at the holoscreen, as he saw the last of his warships exploding in violent, fire-lit streaks, he realized the truth. The Xal'Zir weren't fighting for victory anymore. They were fighting for survival. Vorakal, the High Overlord of the Dominion, bowed his head and did something no Xal'Zir had ever done before. He accepted defeat. The surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. Every empire, every council, every species that had dismissed humanity as nothing more than an insignificant anomaly watched in silence. The mighty Dominion, the most feared force in the known universe, had fallen. And not just fallen. They had been ripped apart, humiliated, and shattered by a species that had only been on the galactic stage for a blink of cosmic time. The treaty was signed aboard the Terran flagship Indomitable. Vorakal, once a god of war, stood before the president of the United Terran Federation. He was twice her size, armored in ceremonial battle plating, yet in that moment he had never felt smaller. The president studied him for a long moment before finally speaking. Her voice was steady, unshaken. You thought we were weak. You thought we were prey. You thought wrong. Vorakal said nothing. What could he say? The truth was already written across the stars. And humanity, once ignored, once mocked, had sent a message that no species would ever forget. Do not challenge us. Do not underestimate us, because we were never the weak ones.